Michael got the call that his wife Emily was transported to the hospital by his neighbor. She was also the one that called the ambulance in the first place when she got the feeling that something strange was going on at their house. The neighbor normally saw Emily at least twice a day when she was walking the dog, but that day she had not seen her once and she got suspicious. There was probably nothing going on, but she still decided to go and ring the doorbell. When she rang the doorbell, the dog started to bark loudly and jumped against the door, but Emily did not come to the door. Emily was on the ground in the kitchen. She was not moving and not reacting to the neighbor banging on the window. But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our upcoming stories. The woman quickly called an ambulance, and they were on the scene within minutes. They realized this was clearly an emergency. They broke open the door and immediately got Emily into the ambulance. The neighbor was calling Michael at this point, and the only information the ambulance personnel could give her was that Emily was still alive. And she herself had seen that Mealy was given a yellow wristband. He was so freaked out that he had not even heard the neighbor mentioning the yellow wristband. When he was called, Michael was actually on his way to pick up their kids and drive them home, but it was clear that they could not go home now. And he did not want to let his children know that there was something going on with Emily. He had to keep a very straight face right now. He picked up the kids from school and actually brought them to his parents. He gave them the excuse that he had to take care of some grown-up business and that they would have to spend the rest of the afternoon and evening at the grandparents'. He tried to call ahead to the hospital as well, but all they could tell him was that Emily had arrived there. Apparently, doctors were tending to her at this point, but that was all the receptionist answering the call could tell him. Michael was actually relatively familiar with the hospital, and he hoped that this would help him get around some of the red tape relatives often had to face. The hospital did everything very by the book, and that meant you had to sign a lot of documents when wanting to see somebody in critical condition. And Michael desperately wanted to avoid that, but it seems like his familiarity only made things more difficult. When he arrived at the hospital and stated his intention to see his wife, Emily, he was immediately greeted with a lot of reticence. The woman assisting him was already racing for the drawer with all the forms when Michael quickly told her who he was. She gave Michael a strange look and told him that she had to make a call. It only took about a minute for her to come back. Her expression had changed and she seemed all smiles as she directed Michael to a room where he was asked to wait for a little bit. Michael was happy that he seemed like his reputation seemed to help him here. At least, that is what he thought. He was unsure if he had even heard it correctly, but he believed that she had said something to him about a yellow wristband. But it would be really strange if the neighbor had actually seen that correctly. Normally, patients who were admitted like that could get a red wristband. He had only seen the yellow one a couple of times with very specific patients, and he was sure Emily did not fall into that category. Now that he had gotten this realization, Michael was even more desperate to see his wife. He had waited here almost 10 minutes by now and still, nobody had come to see him. His patients were running out and he quickly stepped outside of the room to find a doctor, but somebody was already waiting for him there. Outside his door, there were 2 security guards who were not going to let him pass. Michael was ready to become furious at them, but that was of no use. They were under strict instructions to not let him out of the room unless he wanted to leave the hospital. Michael started calling the front desk to ask what the hell was going on here, but all she told him was that he would have to wait for a doctor to arrive and that they were afraid he would go roam hospital on his own. That is why the security guards were there. What did the hospital staff expect him to do if he was left alone in the hospital? Or was something else going on? Did the staff maybe not want him to see his wife? It could be possible that they tried to keep him away from her because she could then see that she was wearing a yellow wristband. And the hospital staff must realize that he knows what that entails. Whatever the case may be and whatever their reasons are, Michael knows one thing for sure. He is not just going to sit and wait here to be helped. He can't know for sure how his wife is doing, and the longer he has to wait here, the bigger the chance that he might be too late. He starts desperately looking for a way out. He knew that the door was no option as long as those bully security guards were still out there. But it was the only door in the room, and the window was also very risky as they were on the 2nd floor. But then Michael thought of something that might give him a chance here. The window is giving a direct look at the entrance of the hospital, and it can actually open up a little bit. He could get people's attention from up here. But would there be anybody down there who would be able to help him and help him fast? Michael estimated the chances of that being very slim, but there was a way he could bring people here who could be able to assist. Officers of the law. He was on the phone with the police quickly, and Michael managed to convince them to send a squad car out. Michael had told them the truth about the situation, and the officer who answered the call sounded very surprised about the hospital's approach. Of course, they told Michael that he should have just signed the papers like a normal visitor, but this not doing this did not deserve this treatment. The car arrived 10 minutes later, and Michael was silently and patiently waiting near the window. There had still been no word from the security guard and nothing about his wife. The anxiety was eating him up inside, so when the officers got out of the car, he wasted no time. He started shouting out of the window as hard as he could that they needed to help him. Everybody who was around to hear it looked up in surprise, and within seconds the security guards had stormed in, most likely to shut him up. But then Michael told them about the police. Suddenly they had no power anymore. The need that the police had seen and heard Michael, and they were going to have to answer them. But it was not like they knew anything about the situation, as the security guards were just sent here to make sure Michael did not leave. One of them quickly made a call to most likely the person who had given them the task. After a short conversation, the guards led Michael down to the entrance again. The officers had made their way inside and demanded to speak with him. They had no choice but to comply. While Michael was walking through the hospital halls flanked by guards, he was drawing a lot of attention from staff and patients. These people did not even know yet that there were 2 police officers waiting for him downstairs. What a crazy situation he had found himself in, and all while he still did not know exactly how his wife was doing. The officers were already talking to somebody that Michael immediately recognized as one of the directors of the hospital and a head doctor that Michael had to deal with by far the most when he directed patients to this hospital. And that man was looking like he could kill somebody right now. One of the officers asked Michael to give his account of the situation. He was a bit reluctant at first, as he just wanted to see his wife as soon as possible, but the officers insisted. Michael obliged, and the officer seemed happy that the stories lined up. This made his job a lot easier. The officer ordered that Michael be brought to his wife, and a nurse immediately came over to assist. The officer in question also walked with them and started to explain the strange situation to Michael. At least, the parts that he understood of it. Michael apparently thought that the hospital staff liked him a lot more than they actually did. They did not like him at all, and you could even say they hated him. In their eyes, he was a useless middleman that just cost them money. If he did not exist, patients would just come directly to them for help. Michael did not agree with this assessment at all, but that did not really matter right now. But this was also the reason that the hospital was not that eager to help Michael avoid standard procedures. In fact, because he tried to do that, they wanted to make him pay by making everything even harder for him. Apparently, it had nothing to do with Michael's knowledge about the hospital and the yellow and red wristbands. The officers had asked the directors about that as well, and they just raised an eyebrow at them. They had no idea what wristband Emily was wearing, and they failed to see the relevance of this as well. Michael had a lot of things to work out with the hospital, and that much was very clear to him. But all of that had to wait, as the health of his wife very much had priority here. By now, the nurse had brought them to the room his wife was supposedly waiting in. When Michael opened up the door, tears immediately came to his wife. There was his wife Mealy, peacefully sleeping in bed. Not looking all too elegant, but that was Emily down to a T. And then he saw that she was still wearing that same damn yellow wristband. He turned to the nurse and told them that they had to have made a mistake by putting that on her. She needed to check it again, and the nurse had no problem looking Emily up in the system to verify their decision. And wouldn't you know, they had actually made a big mistake. The yellow wristband is given to new patients that come in without having insurance. And what makes mistakes here really dangerous is that patients without insurance are actually not immediately treated. If they have life-threatening injuries or illnesses, this could of course quickly spell disaster. Luckily, the nurses had checked Emily's vitals anyway and determined that there was nothing really wrong with her. She had just passed out, most likely from dehydration. Emily had a habit of forgetting to drink water sometimes, and on a hot day like this, it really came back to bite her in the ass. The nurses had put her on some water IVs, and she was slowly getting hydrated again. It did not take long before she woke up again and was ready to go home. Michael was extremely relieved by the whole situation, and it also softened his anger against the hospital and its treatment of him. They ended up having a very good and honest conversation about their working relationship and how to improve it. They eventually managed to find some common ground and made some decisions that both parties could be happy with. And Emily, of course, easily made a full recovery.